Hello, welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. My revisit on the 456 got a lot of nice positive comments, so I'm going to revisit the 469. And this is going to be a little bit of a different exploration because I really wasn't overly impressed when I heard about this pen. And in my review, my initial review, I wasn't as positive as I have been on other PENBBS pens, but after a month or so now of having two of these inked up and using them regularly, the third one is not inked up, but I wanted to put it into this display to give you an idea of the amazing variations in acrylics and designs and colors that PENBBS uses, so hopefully that's coming through on this rotating display. But I've really learned to appreciate this pen and understand how it fits into my collection and my daily use of pens. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. The crabs are getting tired of holding up the pen, so they're saying, write with them, write with them. So that's what we will do. Let's just let it turn around. Let the crabbies say bye. One of the things to note about the 469, it's a long pen, and it's also a girthy pen. Here we have it compared to the 308 and a Pelikan M800, and it's longer than both of those, and a little bit girthier than the 308, which is not a small pen, and comparable to the Pelikan M800, which is not a small pen either. So the 469 does not post. So that's where the length becomes a little bit different, because then the M800 becomes much longer. And the other thing that's different is the section is a different approach and design. So the Pelikan has, classic Pelikan section. It's kind of on the short side, a little bit girthy, flare up at the end. The threads are not an issue. The PENBBS pen has more of, I would call, a traditional, maybe almost to the vintage style, of a lot of curvature here. It's a much longer section, so it gives you more room to move your fingers around, I think, and find an optimal writing spot. So I'm very comfortable and like the sections on the PENBBS pens. Now, because the cap, minimalistic design, so the cap fits without a step up, there is that step up here, which is like the aluminum 380 is a pretty sharp step up, but unlike the 380, this one is not sharp. I have no problem gripping it there or having my fingers touch it when I write. So this is a interesting approach. I've heard the 380 might be coming out in a turned resin, so that'll be interesting to see if that eliminates that sharp spot that I had experienced on the aluminum 380. So the 469 fits extremely well in the hand when you uncapped one end. But when I was using this as a daily writer, what I thought was fun is to uncap both ends. And then I could easily switch between the two nibs and the two inks. But right away when I did that, and this pen shows that, my OCD kicked in and goes, those nibs are just not aligned like they should. So I didn't want to align the nibs until I did that in front of the, you had a chance to see it. But it's easy to flip from one nib to the other. It's still very well balanced and feels good in the hand with the both caps off. But obviously, if you waited too long to write with one end, you'd probably end up with a little bit of a dry, hard start. But it doesn't take long to get ink flowing when you do that. So we're going to align those nibs so my OCD is not telling me, eh. So now I've kind of aligned the nibs as good as I'm going to be able to get it. The two-tone nib didn't really pull out easily, but the silver tone amber is a cat nib. came out very easily. So just to show you that all these nibs can be adjusted, this pen here, which is saved for a future time when I'm ready to ink it up, I've aligned these two nibs. And of course, if I had it inked up, I wouldn't be able to show you how great that clear acrylic looks. And I think this is an excellent resin, and this is the only pen I have in this resin. And the caps are also very nice. You'll notice that the different designs, because of the fact that this acrylic is, hand poured, machined by machine, but no one's going to sit there and eyeball it and make everything look good. But I like that little bit of chaos and that little bit of variety that you get with these amazing resins that they use. So I have a number of these two-tone nibs. They're in the 4, 5, 6s, and I think they're the best fine nib that PENBBS makes. I find it to be more consistent writer than the monotone nib, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but maybe they go through another different process. So we're going to flip it over, and let's see how quickly the other nib that's been exposed writes. You can see it was just that initial stroke, and then the ink started coming out. And this is the silver tone. And this is that amber, is a cat nib. And this nib I worked on. The other two-tone nib, I didn't do anything to it, but this nib was a little skippy. It wasn't quite as nice as I would like, so I did a number of different smoothing operations like I did to fix the 456 nib in my prior video. And now I'm extremely happy with it. You still need some pressure to make certain you have a consistent line. This is like very light pressure, and this is a little bit more than normal. So it's hard, it does have a sweet spot, which many pens do. But as long as you're in that sweet spot, it's a great writer. So I'm going to do another ranking, and I'm not going to be concerned with what I gave this pen before. But this time I'm going to give it a 9.4. I mean, it's just fun to swap it around. And even though when I first thought about this pen, I said, why not just have two different pens with two different colored inks? But it's just nice just to swap it in your hand and get it to write. So I hope you've enjoyed this revisit to an interesting pen that I'm now beginning to enjoy even more than I did when I first got it. So before we leave, we need to just take a look at this pen, which we haven't gone into in detail. But this pen, I did put the rollerball insert in, and it's been in there since I got the pen. And it's a very consistent writer. And this has a Noodler's ink in it. Blue upon the plains of Abraham. It's a permanent blue-black from that was distributed in the Canadian market, and I'm glad I was able to get a bottle of it. It works well, and I think almost any ink would work well in the rollerball. They did a good design on this rollerball, and I've never had any issues with it since it's been in this pen. And on the other side, I have the standard two-tone nib with Iroshizuku Mojito, the red ink. So up here, this had two Robert Oster inks. This is Robert Oster Direct Sun, which is the red, and this is Robert Oster Soda Pop Blue, which is the blue one. So for those of you that may have been wondering what colored ink I had in them, that was it. And I'm not keeping the nib on the paper properly. You know, writing over the tripod and things eventually it's a little tiresome. So we've reached the end of this video, and I'm going to go on a little bit of an angle because that's easier to write with. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this revisit of a pen, which I've learned to appreciate even more. So may you have many great writing experiences. There's a phenomenal world out there for us to explore. How many different ways of putting thoughts on paper. You know, changing that clear, boring piece of paper into something of interest and something that is great to read later on. So we've reached the end of this video. Until the next one, bye for now. This is a great red ink.